What's good, y'all? It's Drew here, back with a collab video. But today, we have a very special guest, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Yo, what's good? I'm Alon Z, professional JJK yapper, here to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen's legacy.
Yes, sir. As Alon Z said, we are here to talk about JJK's legacy. It's interesting because I think when we talk about JJK, a lot of people are going to be fixated on Gojo versus Sukuna because it damn near is like the talk of the town. So I guess kind of going through that, I kind of want to get your thoughts on how you felt from the Gojo versus Sukuna fight to the end of the series, because I think that's when a lot of people think it's more controversial.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the community as a whole kind of agrees that Gojo vs Sukuna is just a massive event. I know when the anime adaptation comes out, that's going to be a huge thing as well. I've never seen anyone complain about it. It's amazing, everyone enjoyed it. Week by week, it was great. And I think once you get to that chapter where Gojo dies, people start to get a little bit tired of the week by week because things happen where like Kusakabe comes in and fights Sukuna, or Ino will show up in a chapter where it seems like it's just meant to be Yuji vs Sukuna. And I know people had complaints about things like that, but I do think even though it's a lot less explosive than Gojo vs Sukuna was, I really like seeing all of our characters come together to beat Sukuna, in stark contrast to how Gojo went out and did it alone. I think that's really great. I enjoyed the ride. Reading it all together after the week by week, it kind of paints a different picture of how well it flows together, which is really nice. With the exception of the last 5 chapters, I think the Shinjuku showdown arc as a whole is actually just really good. I enjoyed every single chapter of it.
No, that's fair. I think that is a true point. I do have to kind of admit that I haven't gone through and read in one sitting the last arc. I mean, that's even we're aware of the battle. Whether it's the nah, I'd win, Gojo sliced memes, Sukuna being like, oh yeah, you were the strongest. It didn't really matter. You were hip to it. When you come off of a climax like that, I think people were expecting something from Gege that we necessarily didn't get. And like you were saying, there were times where this Yuji versus Sukuna fight's gonna ramp up. I'm so hyped for it. And then Ino comes out of nowhere and you're like, oh okay, that's cool. And then Kusakabe and you're like, oh, him. And I remember this was so funny because I made like a video about Todo. I was like, yeah, Todo needs to come back in the series. And people like, oh no. And then he comes back like 2 chapters later. It's like, to a degree, I think that's one of the things that people complained about, especially during that peak, Sukuna gauntlet stage. Gege was just throwing characters at Sukuna and he would drop them off and someone else would come up and it's like, damn. It isn't even necessarily talking about how bad or how, not bad, but how JJK actually was during the time, but how will it be viewed?
Oh, for sure. Like, I think week by week, people were really struggling to come to terms with what Gege was trying to do. I think things like the Todo return, I'm trying to imagine what that arc looks like without it, and I just don't see it being better. I think you have to sacrifice the element of, oh, Todo was gone, there was no build-up, there was no suggestion at all from Gege that Todo was going to return, no foreshadowing. I feel like it's one of those things where you have to overlook that to just go, look at how awesome it was to see Yuji and Todo, the OG duo, fighting Sukuna. If JJK ended and I didn't get that duo 2v1ing Sukuna, I would have considered it a massive disappointment.
I'm actually really glad you said that, because I'm not gonna lie, you might be changing my JJK views in real time, which is funny. I actually think, at least for me as an anime YouTuber, sometimes I get caught in the monotony, and I'm watching Solo Leveling. I'm talking about this off stream. I'm gonna make a video about this because Solo Leveling to me has brought my joy back. I'm not asking for just random shit to happen just for random shit's sake, but sometimes it's like, fuck this, I want to see this guy fight this guy, I want to see this moment because I need to see it, like I understand that, where it's like, okay, well, yes, Gege in a perfect world, I would have loved for Todo to come back and we got the story, we see what he's doing during the color games. That shit is cool. We can have that argument and that conversation at another point. But you're right, like seeing Todo and Yuji having that secondary fight against Sukuna, basically what they did in like the first anime arc, right, where they're fighting, I think it's Hanami, they're doing the whole boogie woogie. That shit was hard. That shit is one of the first few things that got people into JJK.
This is the thing, because people say things like this about Solo Leveling, they say it about Demon Slayer, and now they say it about JJK, that it's like, oh, carried by fights, carried by hype moments. Okay, carried is a strong word, because I think there is actually a lot to JJK. Even if we didn't get what we wanted story-wise, there is a lot to it narratively, but there's nothing wrong with something just, sometimes it's okay if it just wants to be cool. Like Todo coming back with a vibra slap and bouncing them all around, it's cool. And I love that. I couldn't imagine it without it.
I think we get so caught up in the world building and all these things. It's like, bro, at least for me, the reason I wanted to watch anime when I was a kid the first time was because that shit looked cool. It was so much cool stuff to it. Gohan went Super Saiyan 2, Naruto was fighting Zabuza, a bunch of cool shit was happening. I didn't need much explanation, but then obviously we peeled down the layers over time as we got older, but that was the initial interest. And I think sometimes we forget that that's the main premise of anime, in the sense of this is very important. Like there are things that have to happen, but like it's a part. I think it's a big part of anime that people kind of neglect. It's like enjoy anime again, kind of in a weird way.
I think aging for anime, especially these days, is really important. I think the best example I can give, I know a lot of people out there will disagree on this, Attack on Titan's ending got unbelievable amounts of hate when it was initially released, and then it like was allowed to sit there for a bit, and now when you go and look, you'll find that a load of people have actually come out and have very positive responses to it. Something like JJK aging, it's a really important thing to take into consideration. Let the week by week settle down and read it as one go. Let the anime adaptation come out, and then look at it as a whole again and realize just how cool it is. There are lots of things that Gege missed out on, and I agree with that, and I think there are big issues there. But like I've always said about Jujutsu Kaisen, Gege missed out a lot of things and didn't write a lot of things. That's the problem. But I don't have a problem with the things that he did write. It's not that the stuff he did do was bad, it's the stuff that he didn't do that was the mistake, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's a important distinction to make.
Like Gege, like I guess I agree with you, because it's like we have to understand that Gege laid a great framework in a sense of, you could argue maybe it's even a little over ambitious, right? Because there were some things that he set up that we thought, okay, this would have made it an all-time series, and it's like, damn, you didn't do this, I wanted this, you know. Those things, like I think obviously, like I don't think the JJK ending was the best ever. I think there were some things we'll probably talk about that I wish they did better, but JJK did a lot of great things. I mean, we got to be honest, the Gojo vs Sukuna fight,
peak.
I think I mean it was peak. I was gonna say, I'm trying to think if most people would agree it lived up to the expectations. I think if you polled 99% of JJK fans, they'd be like, yo, this is everything I could have wanted in terms of like, we saw them break the barriers of their own abilities back and forth. We had commentary. We were learning. It's like Gege created the series JJK, gave us all the rules of all the sorcery rules, and then had that fight just to break every single one, and that was hard. Like that's something that we all gotta appreciate, I feel like, you know?
Oh, for sure. Like Gojo vs Sukuna was something that had been kind of something he did really well with this series in general, honestly, which I feel like a lot of things I'm reading and watching now fail to do, is he set up that rivalry from the very beginning. Like when those two clashed right at the beginning, that was the setup. The whole who would win, you or Sukuna, and Gojo goes, I would win. That setup for them to finally fight, it was done so well to the point where I was like, can Gege actually live up to like what he's setting up here? And I read the fight, and it's just, I can read it again and again and again, and it never gets old because it's so well done. And I love the fact that he's gone in here like every other shonen, set up the rules, the power system, and then when it came to the fight between the strongest, he was like, do you know what? I'm gonna defy all expectations, throw my own rulebook out the window, and just show how built different they are. That's why it's just so impactful.
And yeah, honestly, it's gonna be up there with some all-time fights. I think in terms of that, like it's just one of those. It's just one of those fights like that are just insane. One of those I would say anime transcendent fights. Like I'd say Naruto versus Sasuke. You could throw in like Ichigo versus Aizen. There's some other ones there, obviously. Those just two off my head that I can like instantly. Obviously, I'll pick almost any Dragon Ball Z fight because it's Dragon Ball Z. But there's a bunch of fights like that, and it's like, yo, JJK is on that list. And I think as a new gen anime, I can't really name a series that's like what in the last 10-15 years that can say, oh yeah, I have a anime transcendent fight, you know?
Yeah, like it will be timeless. It's just one of those things. It's a historical shonen moment. It will be remembered as like one of the greats. And I understand a lot of these things are appreciated, but even when you think about a really popular series like Demon Slayer, I feel like there isn't necessarily a singular rivalry and moment and fight in a series like that the fans pinpoint and go, yes, this was the one. There's not really a debate about it in JJK. Everyone just kind of collectively agrees the pinnacle is Gojo vs Sukuna. And I feel like that is a huge part of JJK's legacy. It's just timeless.
Yeah, because that'll be like spoken about forever. Like that period of time. If you were I honestly, if you catch on to JJK later, if you're watching this video and you're like new JJK, you know what I'm saying, subscribe to both of us, obviously, like subscribe. But if you weren't watching JJK or reading JJK I say reading, if you weren't reading JJK during that fight, it's almost like when you were younger and you hang out with your friends and you're watching a series together and you watch an episode and you're excited to run back to the cafeteria the next day to talk about how crazy that fight was. It felt like that with hundreds of thousands of people every single week, you know? Like, I remember, I was Team Gojo. I don't know where you were at. I was Team Gojo. And I was literally like, yo, Gojo beat Sukuna. Sukuna's a fraud. I was pushing those fraud Kuna memes. I remember. Like, that was a great time, you know?
It's such a, like, great moment for shonen fans because I feel like I haven't experienced that kind of hype. I feel like that's when like JJK really started to pick up in terms of like the week by week, even leak culture, which was a questionable thing that I think a lot of people agree. Leak culture isn't something that really should be supported in general, but there was something about JJK week by week, especially when going into that Gojo vs Sukuna fight. You would like read the chapter and then be like, I need to know. Like I need to know what's going on now. Like, because he did such a good job of making, oh, Gojo looks like he's gonna lose now. Oh no, Sukuna looks like he's gonna lose now. And then again, just week by week, he just defies expectations again and again, to the point where he managed to basically take something, a fight where Gojo was pretty much destined to lose, and still make it seem like both Sukuna and Gojo got a W. Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like they both won. Which is crazy. It's so well done because no one was disappointed. I wasn't disappointed in Gojo losing, even though I was Team Gojo as well. It satisfied everyone.
Yes, sir. I do think, you know, we have discussed the Gojo and Sukuna peak, and like, believe me, it was peak. I do want to say though, looking back, especially people that read the week to week, a lot of people I think in 10-15 years from now will say, unfortunately, I think they're gonna look at JJK and be like, oh, after Gojo died, one thing people are not gonna like. I actually wonder, because you had a take about Attack on Titan, and you talked about how Attack on Titan, its ending was received as bad, which I remember when Attack on Titan ended, everyone hated it. And you know, it's becoming more forgiving as the ending is, you know, people are looking at it more forgiving. I do wonder 10-15 years, like, I think the general public, when it happened, and I'd say even maybe still to this day, would say that the Gojo death scene was a little underwhelming. It was disappointing. The way it ended, you know, the off screen, the way it kind of happened, and that. I do wonder. I actually want your opinion on this, on it overall now, but also wonder what you think. How will it look in 10 to 15 years from now? Like, how do you think that people will look at that death scene?
The Gojo death scene.
Yes.
Oh.
How it happened? Yeah.
That's really interesting because I understand where people come from when they say they don't like it. I'm actually a big fan of it. I don't think I would have it any other way, because the way I see it is the final. This is what I was saying, why Gege did a really smart thing of giving both sides a W. The last panel we see of Gojo, like, alive and standing, was a panel of him smiling at Sukuna with the caption, Gojo wins. I don't think I would have liked to have seen him actually be sliced in half on screen. I like the fact that Gege left it as that was the last panel of Satoru Gojo that we saw of him living, which I really like. But it takes an element of, like, you know, really caring and looking into the narrative and Gojo's character and stuff to really appreciate that, so I get what people mean when they say they don't like it. I don't think opinions on that are actually going to shift. And I don't think opinions on everything that followed Gojo's death are going to shift that much either, with the only exception maybe being if the anime adaptation improves a lot of the things that Gege missed on. I think that could change minds a lot, but our mappa gonna suddenly include plot points that Gege missed. Like, they're not gonna create a whole extra arc and a new ending. So I think it will stay relatively consistent, but, you know, it's a tricky one.
Yeah. That, I will be honest, Alonzi, I will be honest, I didn't hear, I feel like I haven't heard that perspective on his death. I'm actually not, like, I was gonna ask if it's kind of similar to, you know how, the whole point of the series JJK was kind of like, everyone is looking at Gojo as this messiah. He's like that guy. He's literally basically God, right? You know, when he was born, he shifted the curse of, I guess, the cat. We're viewing Gojo through the eyes of the audience, and the audience never saw Gojo fall, kind of thing, you know. And that is kind of your perspective too, where it's like, well, like Gojo, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you see someone that's like, I don't know, an uncle or something, and it's like you view them as so great that when they're like, you know, as a kid they were your hero. So you, like, when they're actually falling off or whatever the reason, you know, you can almost not dare to stare at them and see that they're not what you thought they were. I think that's what I heard when you were talking about that. That's what I felt.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of explaining it, and I think that's kind of what Gege was going for, because I don't see any other reason for him to off-screen it. But I don't think I feel like if people's opinion on that were going to change, it kind of would have done already. I think how people think of it now is how they think of it. So generally, I don't think it will be well received, especially from Gojo fans. I'll be honest, there are some Sukuna fans out there who hate Gojo, and that's just there is some agenda that comes into it. It always will do when it comes to shonen, but yeah.
I think also looking at the end of, and that you also kind of spoke on that too, where you said you don't think the end of JJK will be looked at differently. Feel a lot of JJK fans overall kind of felt insert character does good against Sukuna drops the ball off, and the new character comes up, and that was a cycle. And I'm not gonna lie, I might have been pushing that agenda. You know what I'm saying? I might have done that once or twice, but it did feel kind of like dang Monster of the Weeky, right? And I love Todo. I actually enjoy Todo being there, but I was kind of like a little bit like, oh dang, I wish Todo came earlier. And I actually like Todo. Todo's not even really my problem. You know, you have people like Miguel came out of nowhere. It's like, well, Miguel, like you know what I'm saying? But it was like, I felt like, dang, am I watching Gege ruin JJK in real time? Like I felt like that was a conversation I had with like a monologue where it's like, yo, dude, like we had the anime world in our hand, like the anime sphere. Everyone was looking at JJK, and people are obviously after the fight, they're gonna still look and see how it's happening or what's happening, and it's like, damn, is this where JJK dies? And then I think it didn't help I don't know where you feel about the Megumi thing. I don't think Megumi is a problem. I think my biggest problem, Megumi is okay. I think overall, like I think actually let me list my order of like grievances, at least for me as a fan. I don't want to speak for everyone else. I'm gonna go. So Hakari, I think, was a huge one. Hakari, like, not him fighting Rame and having that entire fight off screen, I think kind of not ruined his character, but it ruined.
It deleted his character. His character didn't exist. Like, Gege was like, I'm gonna hype this guy up and then just gonna delete him off the face of the earth. He doesn't matter anymore. It's wasted.
It's so weird because, like, bro, I had Yuta above Hakari, but I wasn't mad if you said Hakari was stronger, because people would say, oh, Hakari, he, like, you know, he was that guy. He was very powerful. Like, he had something that Gojo didn't have. You know, his first energy had a characteristic. So we know him and Yuta were basically going band for band of who's second after Gojo, and people were fighting that forever. And I thought, okay, well, either you show the Ramen fight, which I don't even really want him to fight only her. I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna jump in, help Yuji, and they're gonna go crazy. And it's like the brawlers versus Sukuna. But to me, the fact that, one, you never showed how powerful Ramen was, so now people who are, you know, agenda pushers, or overall, we can't say Ramen is that powerful. Like, you literally cannot really say it because we never saw anything. She got beat up by Gojo, but it's Gojo, so you can't scale her off that. And then her fight with Hakari is like, no fight, we didn't see it. So now she looks trash, which means now Hakari looks trash, which is like, yo, this is one of the heavy hitters. Maki got to go crazy. She actually was in her bag. I respect it. Like, I respect what they did with her. Sure. I like what they did with Yuta overall. I guess me, it's like, it goes Hakari, then Megumi, and then Nobara. Because, well, if you were gonna bring Nobara back, that's cool. Bring her back. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
if you weren't, like, people are dead, unfortunately, because they got into the point. It was like we were 3 arcs in, damn near. But you can, I don't want to throw too many things at you.
No, I think that's like a pretty valid list, and I think that's the kind of thing most people would have complaints about. The Hakari thing is like, there was this whole, I love the Hakari versus Yuta. Not even like, a lot of people like to push agendas in terms of who's strongest amongst each other, but I liked the idea of Gojo held those two students specifically on a pedestal for a very long time. And even in that moment where Hakari says, when Yuta tries to jump in to Gojo vs Sukuna, and Hakari says, Gojo said that one of us or both of us should only jump in if Gojo becomes weaker than either of us.
That was so tough.
Right?
I was so hyped off that, bro.
That's what I mean, bro. It's like Gojo is setting this thing up of like, damn, these two in Gojo's eyes are like the next him, which is a huge title to live up to. And Yuta, to be fair to him, I know I'm a Yuta Glazer, guys, okay? I know you know this already, but just hear me out. Like,
Yuta Glazer's decent, though. We respect that a lot.
Yuta pulled up, right? After killing Kenjaku, he pulled up, cold-ass entrance, and then got feats. He got feats against Sukuna, alright? He got that domain, crazy domain, right? And he's throwing hands alongside Yuji. He got feats. Hakari, was then left in the dust. Whether you think he should be or not is irrelevant, because the point is Gege didn't give him the same level of feats, or any feats, that Yuta was given.
Yeah.
Which is where we kind of kill this idea that was set up of one of them being in that position to like be the next Gojo, which was this whole thing, and Hakari was just left behind in that conversation, which is disappointing. And the Megumi thing, bro, I get it. Like, I'm gonna be real, wasted potential. I thought, that's such a tricky one, because the first time when he denied to get up in Yuta's domain, I was like, sure, he's depressed, whatever, cool. I really thought by the end of it we were gonna see him like fight someone, something,
or something,
right? Like,
and I think, yeah, and I feel like it kind of it's not as bad as the Hakari thing is like unforgivable. It gets like, I at first sometimes I'll be like, oh well, you know, he did okay. Then I remember like the insistence of Gojo being like, oh yeah, you're one of the guys. Like, if you look at, if you view, you can easily switch your perception of JJK in that Megumi is the main character. And the reason why I say this is because you have a character who, or very, very early on, I think the anime wasn't even, like, season 1 wasn't even finished when Gojo literally says like, yo, you limit yourself, your potential, you need to worry about yourself. Like, in the end, only you die, right? You die by yourself. And he gets a incomplete domain, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
Then he literally says, okay, well, the last 6 eyes usually with what's it called? With not
Limitless, yeah.
With Limitless was untouchable. The only person who could beat him was a 10 shadows user. You know what I'm trying to say? That's
right.
Like you. Like, my limit is literally your limit. We are band for band. Then we see his dad, who literally killed Gojo back in the day. Obviously, he was weaker, but still. So we're seeing step by step, oh yeah, Megumi, if he locks in, he'll be that guy. And then we literally have the main villain of the series take over Megumi's body and kill Gojo. Literally tell the audience, like, guys, Megumi at full potential, his body and skill used by someone else will and can surpass Gojo easily. Not easily, but like, Megumi had his power for like a couple months.
Oh,
not Megumi. Sukuna had Megumi's power for a couple months. And he didn't work Gojo, but he was fighting Gojo band for band.
Bro, this guy, he was handed the ultimate full potential guidebook to the 10 Shadows on a silver platter by Sukuna. Sukuna's cursed energy control. His actual cursed energy absorbed the same way it would have been done by Yuji, right? And then also, the fact that Gege made Megumi's domain a kind of incomplete but open domain. He could have so easily learned from Sukuna how to transition that into a completed open domain and be one of the few sorcerers ever to have mastered that ability and live up to the potential that Gojo saw in him. He was handed the guidebook on a silver platter to become the strongest zenin in history. And where is he now? Fucking grade 2. Like,
that's what I'm saying. He's he's just not that good. And even when you look at it, like you were saying, because even the fact that we didn't have Megumi for such a long time, because obviously Sukuna took over his body, if we even had one more arc where like Megumi, I don't even know how it would be possible, but just have Megumi's like, yo, because we saw Megumi, Gojo was even talking about, I hit Megumi with my domain expansion instead of Sukuna. Like, there was a whole thing there. Megumi could have been like, yeah, I was paying attention to Sukuna, why he used my powers. I get, like, you know, I understand it now kind of thing.
Yeah. And
Megumi could literally pull up with some of those. Now, I don't want him to have every kid that Sukuna just pulled out, but he could kind of pull up like, oh, well, basically like a Black Flash where he's like, yo, my understanding has changed on a molecular level. And that would have been cool. I think people would have rocked with it. And it's like, okay, well, that was kind of what Gojo was speaking about, how he needed to change his mindset. We see someone take his abilities, like you said, and change his mindset. That would be a perfect way to do it, and we don't get that. And it's like, bro, I think kind of similar to what you were saying. I'm hard pressed to find in 10 to 15 years that people will not dislike that part of JJK. At least its ending. You know, some of the high people with the high expectations we had for them and how they ended up. I think people are always gonna not like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that just stands for most of these things, like the Nobara thing as well. Well, I'm really glad that you brought up Black Flash, actually, because I think one of the things that JJK will be remembered for, and something it did really well, is having that. I think something really important in being a successful and remembered shonen is having something as simple as an iconic move. I think domain expansion, Black Flash, the equivalent, a domain expansion is like the Jujutsu Kaisen equivalent to a Bankai, which is massively iconic. And Black Flashes and these things are Maharaga even. Maharaga as an entity in itself is like I feel like these are iconic things that, because of the help of things like, you know, TikTok and edits and all the memes and Lobotomy Kaisen and things like that, bro, like, these things are gonna be remembered forever. I'ma see people, my kids are gonna be growing up going domain expansion, bro. I guarantee it, right? The same way we do all these things from our childhood, they're gonna be growing up saying domain expansion. Because it is just that iconic. I feel like there is no denying that, no matter how much you like JJK. So, sorry, I'm just I went off topic a little bit there, but as part of the legacy of JJK, it's, you know.
Yeah. No, you're good. I think it's a perfect segue, too, because I think that's something we haven't talked about, too, because I do think when we're talking about a series being iconic, you know, Naruto is like, everyone had the ninja run back in the day, you know, the Rasengan, the Kamehameha, like you're saying, the Bankai, those things matter. We can't pretend that those things don't matter. And domain expansion, even the Gojo finger thing, like his pose, people are gonna remember that. Like, people are going to remember like the white hair with the light, like the really, really light blue eyes. Those things are going to be synonymous with JJK for a long time. And Black Flash 2, I think that even the concept of Black Flash, I think is really, I'm not gonna say it's the only series that's ever done it, but it was super unique. And I think that, like you're saying, that is gonna stand the test of time, because if you ever like making a story or anything about that, you want to explain like changing your mindset or like your understanding. Whenever I try to explain, I always say, oh yeah, it's like Black Flash, and people who get it, get it.
Yeah, I think honestly, that's kind of made me think, like, it's a really good point about Gojo, even just his character as a whole, and the kind of way he carries himself, and even just the way he looks. I think, alright, call me a glazer, this might be controversial, I don't know, but if I had to choose one thing and say this will carry the legacy of Jujutsu Kaisen, I think the legacy of Jujutsu Kaisen summarized is Gojo. I feel like he, in a way, made Jujutsu Kaisen, right? Like, a lot of it isn't gonna have anywhere near as much hype as it did without Gojo. Sukuna's a great villain, sure, and he'll be remembered as one of them, but I think Gojo is just...
It's Gojo, yeah. It's Gojo.
Like, because I feel like even the people who will come into the comments now and be like, hey, no, it's not Gojo, why are you glazing? The very fact that there's a debate to be had about that, the fact Gojo has that many haters as well as people who glaze him, it kind of says it all, right? Like, he is the main talking point, because you're either hating on him or you love him. Either way, he's the main topic of conversation. There's just no denying it.
Yeah. And it's like let's be honest, bro. This is also this is a good point to what you're saying too, because Gojo, like, Sukuna's a great character, but I know people that didn't watch JJK. Like, I have friends that didn't read JJK. They didn't know about Sukuna until the fight with Gojo.
Yeah.
Whereas Gojo, if you watched an episode or have seen a scene of JJK, you know who Gojo is.
Yep.
Like, we literally, me and my friends on stream, we ranked the most aura characters of all time, of all anime. And Gojo won. And like, they were mad. They were like, Gojo's not that good. And it's like, bro, like Gojo in terms of like aura farming, I know that's kind of like the new cringy, you know, word or whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of being, oh, he's a cool ass character, like Gojo for a long time, and I think it's pretty, like, I mean, if it's not him by like undeniably, he's in the conversation of being one of the coolest anime characters of all time. That is a fact.
Yeah.
You can throw in Aizen, Madara, Goku, I don't really care. Gojo's in that conversation, if not number one easily. And that matters. Like you were saying, Gojo, if you think about all the cool JJK moments, if Gojo's not in it, it has something to do with bro. Like, it is what it is. He's just JJK.
He is. He is like literally JJK. And I feel like, even though I'm still relatively new to anime and manga, I know that like our generation grew up knowing the names like Goku, Naruto, right? Like, these are iconic characters that remain iconic. What people, I think, forget is that it's not always going to be the same. You build off that. And so later down the line, you're going to have characters from our generation of anime right now who are going to be iconic in the future. Gojo is one of those people. I guarantee it. He is not going to be forgotten. He has basically earned his place in the Shonen Hall of Fame of characters, I feel like Kakashi, Naruto, Goku, these big names that everyone just kind of knows, you know? Like, even Aizen, I feel like, is a great example, but it's just, he is that, everyone knows Gojo. Even if you haven't seen the show, I feel like you've seen Gojo on the internet somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
You know, no, I agree completely. It's like, kind of what you were saying, where it's like, yo, Gojo is that kind of guy where it's just, he's known by all. Like he is there. I'm hard pressed to find a person who I think will be like, oh, I've seen JJK, or I know about JJK, or I've heard anything about it, and Gojo doesn't come up. And even transcending his series, the Gojo versus Sukuna fight is going to be all time. You know, JJK is already standing and, you know, is aiming towards being one of the best anime in the last like 10 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's one of the best anime in this last decade. But we're looking at a series that Gojo, like I literally searched up while we were talking Gojo. I searched up JJK, and I was hard pressed to find a non-manga cover picture that didn't have Gojo in it. Like you are not going to find that, you know what I'm saying? And he's not the MC. He's not Goku. Like Goku and Naruto, they are the MCs. Like the fact that in 15, 20 years, Gojo will be remembered. Like people will remember Gojo because I think this is even like another like idea too. Gojo is how you write a quote unquote the strongest. That's how you write a character like that. And you know, manga, literature, and pick, you know, any media, they all like series love to do that. Series love to have the untouchable, like, you know, David. Now it's always like, you know, the David versus Goliath. Like usually there's like a big thing a big monster you want to topple. But if you're having a character that you want people to root for and you want to have like he was the strongest, usually like Gojo's going to be one of the people you pull up. Like he is going to be that guy. And again, I'm sure people are going to hate in the comments. They're going to think we're glazing Gojo. But at the end of the day, it's like Gojo is like, and I don't know if he's number one in I think he is number one in ranking JJK all time, like voting and stuff. But Gojo is numbers. Like he's purely talking about Gojo will bring, especially during the time, will bring clicks. I think Gojo has already kind of shown to be a transcendent figure in anime, at least for JJK.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier about the Gojo vs Sukuna fight. I feel like Gojo is timeless. He's there now. He's just part of the history of shonen. Is just a big part of that. And the whole strongest thing, you're right, because like the first names that come to mind when I think of My Hero, I think All Might. I think Attack on Titan, I think Levi. And those are the two other my personal favorite representations of like the strongest, done slightly differently. And I feel like Gojo is not only within that trope of the strongest, one of the best written characters, but I think just in general, he kind of, like you said, transcends even that. It's just pure charisma, I feel like, and I do have to thank, like, I feel like with these days, like just TikTok and stuff, like, helps massively. That like my For You page was infected. It still is infected with Gojo. I don't see like I don't see Panda edits. I don't even see Yuji edits that much. Gojo just comes he's just there. Like he's just always there.
Yeah, it is. That is a good point. I think JJK, I'm not gonna say it's the first series. Like I don't like to always do that, but in recent memory, I will say Gojo being a character where I'd say he clears any three characters in JJK combined of popularity. In terms of like you were saying, I think there were people that for the longest time were like Yuji, like there was a whole running theme of JJK fandom being like Yuji doesn't even really deserve to be the MC. Give it to Yuta. Like people now, I don't think it should have gone to him, but people were having these conversations, and I love Yuji. He's that guy as well. But I think that like in terms of this guy is like. If I say the word JJK, what character comes to mind? It's gonna be Gojo, and I think that's the kind of my point with that. But you had did you have something about the Yuji? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I think like Yuji is a great main character, and Yuji is a huge part of Jujutsu Kaisen, right? But I do not feel like Yuji has to JJK what Naruto has to Naruto, or what Goku has to Dragon Ball. Do you know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, it's not even close. Yeah,
he's a great main character. I feel like it's closer to what Tanjiro is to Demon Slayer and things like that. I think it's an amazing main character, but not the character that gets remembered, first. What's the first character that comes to mind when you think JJK? For me, it will always be Gojo. Even though Gojo is like, he's my second favorite character. Yuta's my favorite. But I know that no one's thinking about Yuta when they think JJK. Like, it just is what it is.
Even JJK's girl, it's like, they still...
Even Gojo was somehow still the main presence in Yuta's damn movie. Like, how does that happen?
Oh yeah, because he had the last ending. That joke was raw. Like, and obviously it is funny because I think all the best series, if you think about it, in my opinion, all the best series have like let's say the central character. So for Naruto, it's Naruto, Bleach, Ichigo. It usually involves if you want a character to be relevant in that series, you have to make them relate. I'm not gonna say relate, but you have to make them have a dynamic with the main character, right?
Yeah.
Like Sasuke and Naruto have a dynamic. Kakashi and Naruto have a dynamic. When we look at dynamics, the reason why the Sukuna dynamic, why Sukuna is such a great character, and Yuta, even like Yuta, I fuck with Yuta heavy. If you think about it, a big thing is their dynamic with Gojo. You know, the students, their dynamic. Oh, how is their dynamic with Gojo? And I think some of the people that aren't as loved or as known, their dynamic with Gojo isn't as strong. And I don't think that's like by accident. Like Panda and Gojo, there's not a huge connection there, you know. Yeah. Whereas Gojo and Megumi, that was a huge thing. That's why Megumi was getting pushed. Yuji and Megumi, so even Sukuna and Megumi, like you were saying, that was a push to rivalry from episode 1. We saw that fight, so we're always looking at how does this relate. So I do think that I'm not gonna say Gojo's the MC, but I will say a lot of JJK's characters are based off how they relate and how their dynamic with Gojo is perceived.
Yeah,
it's really, really important.
But I think even though like I do think Gojo remains in that like most memorable position of JJK, I have to give credit where it's due. I think especially, I mean, I haven't seen season 3 and 4, obviously, they don't exist yet, this could change. But I think especially in the Shibuya incident, I have to give props to Sukuna as well for just being like, even though he was not really given much substance in terms of writing until like more so at the end of the story, having a villain that is just able to show up out of nowhere and do what he did in Shibuya specifically, I think is like, it's a really difficult thing to pull off and make as effective as Gege did, and I do think Sukuna deserves props as a villain for that, and I think he will also be remembered as like, I think villains and heroes are often remembered differently in different ways, but I think in terms of that villain kind of area of shonen, Sukuna definitely deserves to get some credit there, and I think he will be a big part of JJK's legacy as well. And I think the Shibuya incident and Hidden Inventory especially will be remembered above everything else, even when the other seasons get released in the anime, with the exception of Gojo vs Sukuna. I think with the exception of Gojo vs Sukuna, season 2 of JJK is what most people will remember as being like peak JJK, but that's quite a bold thing for me to say considering we haven't seen season 3 and 4 yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair because you're saying season 2, the one that we had, like the season 2 that's out now?
Yeah, the season 2 that's out now.
Okay. Oh, like Gojo's past and like that whole. Yeah, I will say for me personally with my JJK experience, I was watching it, currently, watching and reading it, and I think around the Shibuya was peak for me. But after Shibuya, that time from then to I want to say actually when Gojo got released, I want to say after Shibuya arc, from then on until Sukuna took over Megumi's body, I tried to I kind of was falling off the series a bunch, kind of like whether I thought that some of the techniques were a little confusing for me at the time, so I had to go through them a couple times and whatnot. And I think I read that portion maybe 2 or 3 times, and it was like it was cool, but I do agree that like at least I do think there was a slog there a little bit, like a little slower, maybe whether you think pacing or whatnot, but it was a kind of slow down there. But I do agree that the fact that if we think about it, we just spent shout out Gojo, we just spent like 20 minutes talking about how tough Gojo is, and then Gege in the peak of that arc, which is Shibuya, he just said, "Alright, Gojo, you're gone. Like, alright, bro, I'll catch you later." And he had to keep the series going, which he did. Shibuya is, I think, until the Gojo fight, was arguably the best arc in JJK. People were saying it was an all-time anime fight, anime arc, which I agree. The fact that he kept the peak of the fact that he made the peak of JJK and half of the arc doesn't even have Gojo, just off of the backs of Sukuna and the crazy shenanigans we had.
Maharaga, bro. Dear God, Maharaga was cool.
Yeah, Yuji, all that shit that was happening, that speaks towards Gege as a writer, and that speaks towards, like you're saying, Sukuna as a villain. Because because he also, while he was hyping up Gojo, he also spent just as much time, I think, early on as well. Maybe not just as much time, but secondary was hyping up Sukuna. So when we saw even a hint of Sukuna's power, we were like, oh shit, the game has changed. Yeah. And I think that's when, and Shibuya arc is when, I love to say, when the kids grew up, because that's when shit got real. Like, if you look at pre-Shibuya and post-Shibuya, Yuji and the cast, and honestly even the viewers, the maturity has changed. We are no longer, it's no haha and giggles no more. This shit is serious.
Bro, season 1 compared to season 2 is ridiculous. Like, the tone shift between those two things is like, it is 100% deliberate from Gege. But, oh my god, it's crazy. The like, even just, think of it, right, Inumaki is a great example of this. He's just like a quite funny, chill character throughout most of the story, like JJK 0 season 1. In Shibuya, he gets his arms cut off. And like, that just happens. Like off screen, and then Yuta pulls up and he's like, "You've just cut off my best friend's arm," and we're like, "Okay, that just happened. Cool." Look at Yuji's like Nobara dies, you know, or dies.
Nobara dies. Nanami dies.
Like it takes just a massive turn, and we're like, "Okay," you got hit in the face with it, and it's like, "Damn, this is like kind of peak."
Like you definitely have to applaud Gege and Sukuna because Sukuna, I say Sukuna very much held the series down when you look at it that way, right?
Yeah.
Shibuya was peaked because of him. I'd say a big portion of him. And you look at the next couple arcs. Shout out Gege. He uses that time after Shibuya to throw in Hakari. He throws in Yuta, which are, you know, I'm not gonna say Gojo disciples, but they're people that were like, okay, cool. You know, they're keeping the hype alive. Then we have, to me, at least me, what revitalized me until the end of the series was the Sukuna taking over Megumi's body. I was like, yo. That was when I was like, oh, Gege is an all-time writer. Like, he is literally, I mean, Shibuya was Shibuya, obviously, but I love me a good reveal and a good twist. And a good, you know, bringing up developments. Like, that's when I was like, okay, we now know why he cared about Megumi. This shit is insane. And I'm like, okay, cool. Gege's that guy. And he did all that without Gojo. We did, like, that was all.
Yep.
So that is true. I think that also will be looked very highly. Like, Sukuna as a villain. Obviously Sukuna won't get as much love on this video as Gojo will, but Sukuna is a character that will be looked at very, very heavily. I think as much bad PR as everyone got towards the end of the series, Sukuna's PR did not get bad. He was good. Like his only increased, so we have to shout him out for that as well.
Yeah, he remained consistent. I think honestly, in that time period where Gojo was sealed away and Gege had to kind of keep the show tied down, I think the two big things which really like, okay, I'll be fair and say what I know what all the fans are thinking. The three big things that happened that I think really kept everyone engaged was Maki's rise to Toji level and her annihilating the zenin. I think it was, I think Yuki and Chozo versus Kenjaku is like an all-time JJK fight. Not talked about enough. I think that was amazing. And I know all the fans, I prefer Yuta and Sendai personally, but I know all the fans love Hakari vs Kashimo as like a big staple of the culling games. And I know you all love it, so I'll include it. I think those are like the three big things that like kept things tied down for the fans while Gojo was sealed away.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how I slept on Maki for so long in this video, because she's to my top 5, probably top 10, easily top 10, probably top 5. She did Gege also had, that's the thing about Gege, because we're talking about how he glazed, I'm not saying glazed, but how he propped up Gojo to be this insane character. But one thing I think he did that was really good was that he hyped up Gojo while low-key hyping up other characters that we didn't really look at and notice. Like, everyone really knew Maki was tough.
Yeah.
She had her little moment, but no one thought Maki was going to be running shit like this.
Hell
like,
no.
We did not expect that Maki would be doing this. Like, when she had the massacre against all the Zen, and I was like, oh shit, she's insane. And she had moment after moment. I'm like, yeah, Maki is that girl. Like you were saying, the Hakari Kashimo fight one, I think also, in a funny way, I think it also helped Yuta stock too, at least until we saw Yuta go crazy, because Yuta had already had a lot of moments, but we had gotten Hakari and Yuta kind of glaze of like, oh, Gojo's like, these guys will surpass me. And it's like, okay, are we sure? Like, even Kenjaku's like, bro, like, no, they're not gonna surpass you. They're not that tough.
Yuji like witnesses the power of 15-finger Sukuna in Shibuya, and then at the end of the arc, after all that destruction, turns to Yuta and says, I feel like you could kill me if Sukuna gets out again. Obviously, he's waffling, but the fact that he made the statement is like, it was just, okay, I see what you're doing. All right, cool. We'll let him cook. And I feel like things like that kind of kept anticipation going is what managed to like keep people, little things like that. Even just the like Yuta saying Hakari is even stronger than he is when he's fully ramped off. It's like, things like that kind of kept you interested, you know?
Yeah, because we're like, exactly, like to your point where it's like, okay, so that's a great timeline right there, because You see how crazy Sukuna Five Finger is, or Five Finger Sukuna, and like, oh shit. Then Yuji is waffling, he's capping his ass off.
Yeah.
He's like, oh well, you could probably kill me. So now we're looking at Yuta and we're like, oh, he's insane. Then Yuta out of his own mouth is like, oh yeah, when Hakari gets serious, he's gonna be insane. So now we're looking at Hakari, we're like, yo, what can you / Yuta, what can y'all do? And when we see Hakari put the brakes on, put the, drop off Kashimo and really like put the brakes on him, we're like, okay, this is what the power of approaching Gojo looks like. This is the potential of what Yuji and Megumi, I know Bar, she was dead, can eventually do. This is what we are expecting. So that fight meant a lot. Like that was easily, until the Gojo fight, that was, I think, what most people would say was the best fight in JJK by far. That Kashimo Hakari fight. And like gege, I don't side note, I don't know why people act like great fights aren't a great part of shonen anime. I don't know why we do this, but
I agree. Yeah,
great fights usually are surrounded, are usually stuff with development before and after the fight. So that's a thing that people just funnily, I don't know why they ignore that. But JJK, I think this is a great example. Gege has used a lot of these all-time fights to kind of basically meet our expectations with characters. So we got to finally see what Hakari / Yuta could do in that fight. The fight with Maki, it's not really a fight, she massacred them guys. But that battle, we got to see, okay, well, this is what Maki could, this is what a new gen Toji could do. We saw what Toji could do before, but what can Toji do with all these crazy weapons? Like, oh, maybe she can surpass Toji. Like all these little items and stuff. It's like, bro, we have to acknowledge that Gege used each fight, these all-time fights, masterfully. And shout out Yuki versus I think you said you were talking about the Yuki versus
Kenjaku,
versus Kenjaku. Yeah, you talking about Yuki versus Kenjaku, right? Just that fight?
Yeah, I think that's a good example of what you're saying. In a lot of like places, mangakas will like do like a lot of character development outside of fights. A lot of the time, like Gege does great at evolving these characters within their fights, because Yuki obviously isn't a character that got much development in herself, but that fight was a huge thing for Chozo, and throughout that fight Chozo got immense amounts of love and character development just fighting Kenjaku, which is like something Gege was really good at, is developing characters within a really cool fight. I feel like it's a really hard thing to do, and he's not appreciated enough for being able to write like that. Like it's amazing.
It is insane. I think like that's one thing that I hope Gege, we're talking about, how will it be viewed. I wonder how people will view Gege as like a writer in terms of that. I think it is interesting. I think he opened some he opened some plot lines he wanted to close. He didn't get to close them, but I think he lived up to a lot of things he set out to do. A lot of characters like the Makis of the world, they exceed our expectations. We can call out the stuff that didn't reach our expectations, but we also have to be like fair and be like, oh yeah, I didn't expect you to do this with Maki. I didn't expect you to do this with Yuji. Like, I don't think people thought Yuji was going to have his backstory that he did. No one thought that. That was an insane call. That was an insane pull. The whole thing with even the 10 shadow stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff that we got that we weren't expecting to get. You know what I'm saying? So I gotta give credit for that.
Yeah,
I guess we can kind of close it out with this. How are you viewing JJK as a whole, as the series? Like, how do you think people are going to view JJK the series? Like, I don't know what your all-time rankings of anime are, but how you think people are going to view JJK as a series in the current era? Like how would people going to view the 2010s, let's say 2020s, the 2020 anime, like where it ranks there, and how you going to think it ranks all time? That's why.
Now, that's a good question. I think the original, like, old gen big three are gonna remain in their position. I think if you're gonna look at like new gen shonen, I think they need their own kind of classification. I don't think it's worth mixing those things up, because I just don't think they're comparable. They're just different times. If I was gonna say there was like a big three of new gen past the old gen, I think JJK has solidified a spot there. I don't think it matters about the flaws. I think in terms of the level of motion and popularity it reached, it will be remembered as like top 3 new gen. Like, I think especially when the anime gets finished, and for Gojo vs Sukuna alone, I think it's earned its spot there. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement. I think the JJK in terms of the new gen, it's like no argument. I don't think So I mean, I think what people would say, well, I know that it was in a big three of like Chainsaw Man and Hell's Paradise, but looking at those animes, JJK has already cleared those.
Yeah,
guys,
bro.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I liked Hell's Paradise too, but it cleared those guys. But even looking at like, I don't know, My Hero, even though this is a little bit earlier, but My Hero, Demon Slayer, Black Clover, Boruto, Sakamoto Days, Dandadan, I think JJK will be the pinnacle of the new gen series. I strongly believe that, honestly. In terms of, like you were saying, the motion, the quality, the iconic characters, like people were gonna, we haven't even talked about Toji. We don't even need to, but Toji is also an iconic guy too. Iconic. There's a lot of iconic guys in this series. Gojo, Sukuna, Toji. I'm not sure a lot of new gen series have a 3-man lineup like that, where I can be like, yeah, I know him. Oh, I've heard of him. Oh, I've seen him before. Like, I don't know if a lot of series can point to that. So that's where I'm going with that.
I'll be honest. I keep it real. I'm gonna call it right now. I think the next thing that will reach these heights, or come the closest to reaching these heights, will be the Kagurabachi anime. When that gets released and it gets motion, I think the only thing that can contend with like what JJK did, because from what I've read already, I think Kagurabachi is maybe already better than Jujutsu Kaisen, and I think it will be. So in terms of new gen that's currently here, JJK stands on top right now, I think. Like, honestly, I think it stands on top. But watch out for the upcoming stuff, because Kagurabachi it feels like JJK, but what it should have been.